Hey everyone. All right. So I'm Shauna Chambers. If you don't know, if you're not part of my youth group, and you are listening to The Gap, where we are trying to gain authentic perspective. So we are taking 40 days to have 40 conversations and with 40 different people and try to learn to listen a little bit better, how to fill in that gap and gain some perspective. So today we have Miss Destiny Arnold, and I absolutely love her. I met her she's another one of the Princeton people that I met through Princeton Theological IYM, the youth cohort, and cohort I, no I left behind. Um, and so, Destiny, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. Shauna is a godsend. We immediately gravitated towards one another when we started our cohort. And I just feel like, just spiritually and soul wise, we've just been inseparable since. We keep up on Facebook and Instagram, and I love to see her beautiful family. And it really lights up my life. So I'm so excited to be here, everyone. Um, like Shauna said, my name's Destiny. I am my first job and my first love is the C5 Georgia Youth Foundation, and I am a camp director with the program. It's a nonprofit that serves youth from 12 to 18, and we work with young people to figure out kind of what their leadership qualities are and helping them to navigate what that looks like when interacting with other people and how that works with your career and the college choices you make. And of course, we don't have a perfect formula, but we really do have an amazing program that reaches an abundance of students around the Atlanta area. So I'm excited to be here. That's me.
I love it. Now, are you still doing, is this like the camp that I know that you used to like take trips, like camping
Yeah,
trips.
yeah, we're still doing that. So we bring all of our kids to our camp that's north of Georgia or north of Atlanta. It's about 2 hours or so. So a lot of our kids have never been out of this cityscape and this concrete jungle that we know and love. Well, partially love, I should say, here in Atlanta. So we select our kids to come up there, but then after their second and third years in the program, when they're with us during the summer, we send them to the Appalachian Trail, which is a really great experience. I've done that trail a few times with them. And we also send them out to Wyoming with the National Outdoor Leadership School. And they literally pack their entire lives on their back for 7 days, and they figure out navigation skills and what it means to be frustrated, but still having to reach a common goal. So yeah, we still do that. And it's been a little different, obviously, because of COVID and the impact it's had. But we're really excited to get back to our normal schedule this summer. So we'll be sending more students out to the Grand Teton area and out there in the Midwest to go for this trek again. So we're excited.
So, okay, 7 days,
Mhm.
and there's no, like, bathrooms or anything, right?
No, no bathrooms, like everyone. And honestly, it's so funny that a lot of times people like that's the first question because truthfully, like that's the least of your worries when you're out there. I think that obviously going to the bathroom can be a big scary point for a lot of people, like going to the restroom outdoors. But I mean, really, when you think about it, we are a part of nature.
Mhm.
And, if we believe that God created us from dirt, like we're all a part of one another. So just going out there, you don't even think about it. You're just like, hey, I gotta go. It's just like if you have a pet, right? They gotta go, you let them out, they come back in, and you're good. So it's just I think our biggest concerns out there, honestly, are like keeping your feet dry. We do a lot of river crossings out there. And it's so awful. Like, if anyone listening here has been on trek or has been camping and you have to walk around with wet socks in your boots, it is the pits, And so I think that for us, like, that's the biggest thing. Like, bring extra dry socks or just bring plenty of water because being dehydrated is so sad. Or bring food that you really enjoy because eating bland oatmeal every morning is so sad. So I think that we take the focus off of the natural things that we as humans already know how to do, and focus on the other things like, how do I work with other people when I'm hangry? Because my attitude is awful when I haven't eaten, or how do I deal with other people when I've got my own issues going on? And I think that it's a really transformative space for a 14 or a 15-year-old to have to think about other people in addition to yourselves. I mean, us as adults, that's something that we have to consider every day. How do I meet my own needs and also consider the needs of other people and be thoughtful and productive and a nice human, but also create boundaries that may sometimes offend other people, but you create those boundaries in order to create a healthy space for yourself. Um, so those are all things that we're practicing in the outdoors, and it's just really, really cool to see a 15 and 16-year-old conceptualize those things, because I wish that I had had that when I was their age
Oh
to
yeah.
understand. Oh my gosh, yeah, like all those valuable skills that like I had to learn at 24 the hard way. They're getting to still the hard way, but in a controlled environment where failing isn't detrimental, where
Mhm.
failing doesn't mean your life is over. And obviously it doesn't mean that in other spaces, but there's less at risk where they can still learn these really valuable skills about life. And so honestly, like that's my favorite thing ever. I couldn't imagine myself, not being a part of something that allows young people to recognize that you don't have to be on this earth for 40 years to understand that people just want to be loved. you know you don't have to be around for X amount of time in order to understand that you can create standards for yourself that you hold other people to. And I especially like what we do because we're picking minority students
Mhm.
who come from backgrounds where maybe they aren't told these things on a regular basis. And not that kids of the majority race don't have hardships and struggles. But I think, we understand that it's disproportionate. And I think we understand that, for a lot of kids of color, they have different opportunities and different access. And so it's just really cool to, especially with camping, because it's such an expensive hobby.
Oh
You
yeah.
get the gear, you have to travel somewhere, you have to, I mean, especially if you live in Atlanta, you've got to travel at least an hour to get to a really truly remote area.
Yeah.
And so being able to give that access to our kids who would probably normally never have that access, it's just been a really awesome experience. So yeah.
And like I wasn't talking about during, but I literally just finished, and this is the first time I've ever done it. I just finished the Daniel fast. And oh my gosh,
Huh.
it's like the first 3 days are the hardest. I literally felt like I
Yeah.
was going through withdrawals. So it's
Yeah.
like I can't even imagine like being a teenager and like because you're not being able to eat like all these hearty meals, unhealthy meals that most
Mm-hmm.
of us are used to. And I almost felt like, I mean, I was hangry the first 3 days, but I also like I was so hangry that I felt like I was sick sometimes.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine because it you can't pack all of your, all your hamburgers and cheeseburgers and all that stuff in your
Exactly. There's
backpack.
no Chick-fil-A on the mountain.
Yeah. So I bet even some of them like kind of go through almost like a little bit of a withdrawal type of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and it's crazy because, you're going through, do they have like cell phones or
Not
anything?
at all. No technology. Yeah, it's just remote. Just
And
them
it's
and
like,
nature.
I bet some of them have like a hard time because, like, especially this day and age, like, we're addicted to our screens, we're addicted to our
Absolutely.
phones.
Absolutely.
But it's almost freeing. So I bet like the transformation from the beginning to
Mhm.
the end, it's like the middle's kind of a little bit rough, but towards
Oh,
the
yeah.
middle end is
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, okay, I see where you're growing and it is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's really great too. And I love our program, it's progressional. So everything happens over 5 years. So their first year in the program, you know, they're at our campsite. It feels like home, it's very familiar. They come there for their second summer and we send them a little bit further for their outdoor experience, but they're still not too far. They're with most counselors that they've been with from the previous year, and then they go for their third summer now out to this expedition. And so, you know, I do think that it's nice for them to have a progression, but you're right, it's hard to just separate yourself after being on your phone and around your friends and on social media for 10 months out of the year, and all of a sudden that's completely stripped away from you. I think it's really awesome because, you know, they get to moments where they do have those outbursts and then they say like, whoa, was that me? Like, I didn't even recognize myself when that happened. And a lot of people don't have those moments until it's critical. You know, we're with someone that we really love, or
Mhm.
we're talking to our children, or we're talking to our boss, and we have this outburst. And we had never experienced that outburst before. We're like, whoa, is that me? I don't recognize myself. So I think that that piece is intentional, you know, those first 3 days of you feeling like you're completely out of character, you're feeling even ill to some extent. Like all of that is intentional because I think it's important for them to recognize the really great parts of them and the really not so great parts of them, you know, and knowing that as a leader and knowing what it is that triggers those things, what triggers your success and what triggers your really bad parts, what triggers those dark places in you, recognizing and acknowledging those moments leading up to that is, I think, invaluable. You know, if I knew what it was that triggered me to feel certain emotions or certain things, I could have almost prevented a lot of things that were bad or a lot of terrible conversations from happening, because I can say, whoa, this is going there, this is pushing me to that limit. And I think as a teenager, they're really, really in a great space to be able to say, okay, I'm getting pushed to that limit. Like what do I do? And we're great to have counselors out there who are with them, that have been with them, you know, for the first couple of years of the program, who are saying, yeah, I know you and I love you, but this right here, this ain't it, you know. Like
Mhm.
we can't do that. So it's really great to see, like you said, the transformation in them and seeing them look at themselves in the mirror and a true reflection of themselves, and really picking out those things that aren't so great and being able to improve upon them.
Yeah, and it also, like, it's okay, to be vulnerable because whenever you are like, you have to be vulnerable in those situations, but there's beauty in the discomfort because it
Yeah,
does help you build those boundaries,
for
and it's
sure.
okay to build those boundaries. Like, so many people are like, "Oh, yeah," like, you everybody has to have boundaries. I have a
Absolutely.
problem, I'm a yes girl, like,
Uh-huh.
anything
You and
that
I
yes, I'm
both.
like, "Yes, okay, yes, whatever you need," like, of
Uh-huh.
course, like,
And then
what
you look at the calendar and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do this to myself? I'm gonna have no time.
yeah, so it's really hard, but, like, I'm actually, like, here recently, I'm like, "No,
Hmm.
no," because, I've gotta take care of myself, and
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be able to take care of anyone else if I can't take care of myself.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so you're called, like, a leadership social awareness director, right?
Yep. Hmm.
So what exactly does that mean? Like, what is, like, your responsibility?
Yeah, so I primarily work with our first, second, and third year students of our program. So those are seventh, eighth, and ninth graders. In this really weird, critical, like awkward moment. I remember myself in the eighth grade and just remember like, oh my goodness, like poor adults that were around me. Like, how did they even deal with me? And here I am, that adult dealing with seventh and eighth graders. So what that means is I enter the students into the program, help them acclimate themselves to what we are and what we do, and kind of our boundaries as a program. But I also have meaningful conversations and do different group facilitations around what leadership is and what their leadership qualities are, how each person's leadership quality differs, and how you work with each other with those differences, because some people are loud leaders and that's awesome, and some people are quiet leaders and that's even greater, right? And so understanding that because you have a difference doesn't mean that you're not of value to the group, right? I think we often see the people who are on the front lines, the people who are in front of the microphone, in front of the camera, and we're like, oh my gosh, I want to be that person. But not everyone can associate with that, you know, especially like for me growing up, although in certain moments I felt very comfortable in front of an audience, I mostly felt very shy and I mostly felt really intimidated to get out in front of people because I didn't want to look stupid. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't want to embarrass myself. And I know that my students sometimes feel that way. You know, I don't want to embarrass myself, but we work with them to build their confidence. You know, whatever level you're at, just know that what you have to say has value. You know, what you believe in, what you're passionate about, your family history, everything that you've come from, that's important and that's your story. And you have a right to tell that because there's somebody on this earth that needs to hear that. You know, there's somebody on this planet who's going to be impacted by your voice and by your story. And as insignificant as you think it is, that's going to change someone's entire life around.
Mm.
And you know, so those are the things that I like to instill in my young people. Like, there's no story that's insignificant, there's no struggle. So what if it's different from someone else's? You know, so what if your path doesn't look the same and maybe it wasn't as put together as someone else's? I think the more jagged edges someone has, the more dynamic of a story they have to tell.
Yes.
And that's even more of a reason for us to feel empowered to share that, you know, because I think there are so many other people who are just waiting to hear that, who are just waiting to see someone who has struggled in the ways they have, but maybe it's not popular or maybe it's not mainstream. But I think that, you know, what I try and tell my young people is whatever you have to say, you say it. And whoever accepts it, it's okay. But whoever doesn't, that's perfect. But who's going to get it and who it's meant for, you still need to say it for those people, you know? So
Mhm.
yeah, that's leadership and social awareness. I like to, we focus a lot on social issues and, you know, talking about social media and the negative impact being on the internet all day can have on us. We talk about I like one of my favorite, we call them social awareness program. One of my favorites is the textile industry and how we just buy a bunch of clothes just for the sake of having a fun brand, but what it's doing to the planet and what it does for people in other countries who work in these factories for 15 and 16 hours a day for below minimum wage, you know? So just being thoughtful about our impact on other people, being thoughtful about our impact on the earth with outdoor education, being respectful of the people around us. I mean, it all is really intertwined because it really stems from caring for yourself and caring for others. And that looks different in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's a really, really fun job.
I love that. It reminds me, the last part that you said kind of reminds me if you've ever heard of like Jen Hatmaker's Seven. Have you ever heard of that book? And
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, at one point, like she only could wear 7 articles of clothing for a whole
Yeah,
month. And it's
yeah.
just like, and then she started thinking about actually, I'm like trying to weed through my clothes and stuff. And I'm like, why do I have 5 pairs of jeans?
Yeah,
I don't need that.
yeah.
Like, why in the world do I have that? But it seems like it's a social norm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't have 5 pairs of jeans, then what are you doing with your life?
Right.
If
Right.
you
But
don't have,
excess is the social
yes. And
norm.
it's
More
so
than you
hard.
need is popular. Like, why do I need 7 cars? You know, why would I need a $10,000 necklace? Like, and
Mhm.
those are the things that we see on social media every single day. And so it becomes normal for our lives. And that's not real. That's not reality. And it's also not prudent for young believers, for people who I believe for me, especially, like, I don't think God really cares about that stuff. I think he wants us to prosper and he wants us to live well. But he doesn't want us to live well at the expense of doing it so we can show off. Like, that's not why.
Oh
I
yeah.
think I think there's a totally different realm of folks out there who, may call themselves believers who also feel that having a jet and 7 cars are what's important in life. And that means that you've somehow reached this like supreme level of Christendom because like here you are and you're prospering. It's like, no, I don't. Those things aren't important to me, and
Mhm.
I want for the people that are influenced by me, my young people, to understand like, yes, it's okay to live well, but you don't have to live in excess. We can be okay, where what we need. And even biblically, like God provides us for what we need, not excessive, and our cup can run over, but it's still what we need for us, and other than that, we distribute the wealth and we share with other people and we make sure our neighbors and loved ones are taken care of as well. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Now, you said that, and this isn't like one of the questions that I
Yeah.
I always try to send questions before, but if something sparks, something sparks.
For
So you
sure.
say like you talk to your kids about hard situations,
Hmm.
um, uh, whether it's social, any pop culture, anything, that they might have to deal with.
Hmm.
Especially, I feel like this past year has been a really rough year. Like
Hmm.
not outside of COVID. I mean, Georgia was a hot spot for the election
Hmm.
and for, I mean, a lot of stuff went down, whether it was Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
and social injustices, everything. Like, um, how do you navigate and help um your African American
Hmm.
young people to navigate through these hard times? And like, and of course, like, I come from a predominantly white
Hmm.
church and a predominantly white like state. I mean, West
Hmm.
Virginia is not known to be
Yeah.
but I mean, we want to learn, and like, and this is where this place is for. Like, so like, how in the world would you, if you had someone that was like me,
Yeah.
and didn't wasn't around that, like, how would you say like how you can support other young people that are
Mhm.
trying to navigate through it, because it is scary.
For sure. For sure. Um, so I think everyone's influence starts with their own story. And I think everyone has a different perspective. And I think for every person you may ask this question, they're gonna give you a different answer. But for me, I grew up in a very peculiar situation in that I'm Black. My parents are Black. I grew up in a Black church, but I went to predominantly white schools. That was middle school, elementary, college. Everywhere I went, I was generally the minority. Um, but I went to a church where it was predominantly Blacks. And so I was honestly, I was so blessed to see both sides of the world. And my parents intentionally put me in spaces where I could see different perspectives. And so I was very grateful for that. Um, I honestly, when it comes to racism and that kind of thing, like, I don't know. I truly feel bad for people who are racist. Like it's almost like a sorrow that I have where it's like it's so unfortunate that they can't truly appreciate God's creation and every part of it,
Hmm.
you know? They can't turn on the TV without seeing something that's going to upset them, right? They're not there because it's everywhere. And this is the world that the Lord created, and we should appreciate it. And so the fact that people have to wake up every day and be angry because they don't appreciate God's creation, like that's beyond me. It just makes me so sad for them.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but for my students, for my young people, because again, their experiences are different. And again, like I have I've grown up in the South my entire life, so I've experienced racism firsthand. And I've experienced situations, and I know I will continue to experience situations where they are unfair based off the color of my skin. Um, but what I like to share is that you still have to be great. You know, you still have to live your life, you still have to do the right thing. Someone's poor decision doesn't give you the right to then make poor decisions, you
Mm.
know? Someone's lifestyle, whether it be negative or positive, never gives you the green light to then go and commit something negative towards someone else. Like, I still have the responsibility to be positive. I still have the responsibility to work hard and to build a future for myself, because racism or not, I have a legacy to leave, you know, and I have one day a family that's going to look up to me and look at my actions and say, you know, this was a virtuous woman. And I don't let those things distract me ultimately. You know, I think that they're going to have their day of judgment with the Lord, and what he decides to reckon with them is between him and them. um I make the conscious decision to not let those things be a hindrance to my success. And although I know that there is a specific level of social scaffolding in our nation that creates an environment to intentionally hold back people of color, we still have the purpose, and we have to have the drive to push beyond that, you know, and to do better than what my parents did. And I want my kids to do better than what I did. And in order to do that, I've got to block out a lot of sounds, you know,
Oh,
racism or
yeah.
not. There's a lot of people out there that are telling me that I can't. And if I sat there and ruminated on all those things and just sat in all of those feelings, I would never get anything done. And so I still have to live my life and be proud of what I do, and believe that God is proud of what I do, every day, regardless of what people say. And so I really try and influence the young people that I speak with. You know, I know it hurts. Those words are terrible, and it doesn't feel good. The things that we see on TV is atrocious, and it's awful, and these things should not happen. And yes, go speak your voice and go tell the world how you feel, and write your senators and run for office and learn about politics so you can be smarter than the law. And and you know, we get our students with different organizations that teach our kids what the laws are and what you can and can't say to police officers and what their rights are. So we are very involved with the community, with our local councilmen, all of that, and making sure that they feel comfortable, if they were confronted by police or anyone else in an authoritative figure. So, you know, I we also work with reason and with rationale, but at the same time, it's like at some point we have to rise above that and not let it hinder us from being who we know we're destined to be.
Yes. Okay, so Destiny, you said I like that you said that you have to be smarter than the law.
Mhm.
And it's crazy because, like, on TikTok and everything like that, like um more and more things here recently have come to the surface of, things from our childhood that we were taught that were totally wrong, and fabricated or stretched out. And um it's just like the last episode, if you didn't listen to it, we talked about how we can't just read the headline.
Mhm.
Like, you can't read the headline and think that you are a master at it.
Yeah.
Just like, just because you know that, you know, who built the ark, Noah, and all of the, you know, the typical biblical stories, just because you know it doesn't mean that you understand it. And it doesn't mean that there isn't so much more behind it.
Mhm.
So, yes, like, I think being smarter, whether it's through laws, through what you're passionate about, whether if you're going to if you're going to dive into something, make sure that you take the time to know everything about it before you decide to come forth and be like, hey, like, this is my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Don't have an opinion about something just because your mom had that same opinion.
For sure. For sure. I mean, Jesus didn't start his ministry until his 30s. Before that, he was studying and in synagogue and reading the Torah and understand so there's a preparation to whatever we're destined to do, right? Where that we have to take in order to truly do what it is that we're called to do. We can't walk in there uneducated or not knowing. We're not always going to know everything, but to go in and expect to implement change in something to where you've affiliated none of your time or associated none of your studies, like it's going to make that journey much harder than if we actually take the time out to understand and gain the knowledge around that. So I completely agree.
Um, so like, with everything with like COVID and everything that we've talked about this past year, what do you think like the hardest thing about like being a Christian during this time is?
That's a big one. I think that I don't know. I think the church that we all knew, is kind of crumbling before our eyes.
Mm,
I think that what we always understood to be this edifice, right? What we always understood to be this building with these people and this leader who's the pastor and he preaches every Sunday for 45 minutes and then we sing a couple songs and then we give the offering and then we leave and then we eat some cool cookies and we all drive away, right? Like all of that is, I think we're really coming to the realization that that's not what the church is. That's not what the body is. And case in point, we're running church virtually, right? And I think there are millions of people who never even thought about that being the reality of their life and the reality of ministry. And my parents are pastors and they've had to pivot from being in a building and in a church to preaching online and to giving sermons online. And I think that before 2019 or before 2020, we kind of poke fun at people who did Bible church online. Yeah, I'm attending service from my bed. Oh, yeah, they're the slackers. But now here we all are.
yeah, jokes
we
on us.
Most of us haven't been in a church building in at least a year.
Mm,
And it's still working, right? The body is still growing and almost at a better rate. And I think that removing this physical thing from our mind, taking it almost was an idol, right? It has to be a church, it has to be a building.
mm.
But one of my favorite songs of all times is, oh, I can't remember who it's by, but he's like, if we're the body, why aren't our
Oh,
hands reaching? Why aren't our feet going? Why aren't our arms reaching? Like, why aren't we doing the work as the body of Christ versus feeling like we have to be in this building making people feel ashamed or whatever it is, right? Or all of this liturgy, all of these things that we as humans have prioritized that God maybe doesn't prioritize as much. And I think that we have been put in a peculiar situation to where we're now having to prioritize what's actually important, not what looks important.
Mhm.
What looked important before was having a whole bunch of members, right? What
Mhm.
looked important before was sending 90 kids outside of the country to do a missions trip. But are we doing missions in our community? Are we taking care of the homeless and the displaced who have lost their home over the past year? What work is the body truly doing? And I think that, I don't know, God has a crazy way of making us recognize what's important. I mean, he did it to all of his disciples, right? He shook them up in a way that took them completely off guard. They were on this like, I even think of Saul, who was on this path and he thought he was going, doing his little thing. And all of a sudden, his whole life got turned upside down. And he's
Mhm.
like, oh, snap, I'm Paul now. And I love Jesus and I'm a minister. Wow. So I think that we are in that position of having a revolution in our minds as a church. And I think it's really awesome personally, because I think it's really getting back to the root of what Christ was here to do. I think for a really long time, the church, and I include myself in that, um, focused on what it looked like versus what it was. And what it is love, right? What it is compassion. What it is mercy. What it is grace. What it's not is this multi-million-dollar building that we can brag around the neighborhood. What it isn't is a building fund. What it
Mhm.
isn't is all of this other stuff that we prioritized, right? And so I think COVID did an incredible work and is still doing an incredible work in the leaders of the church and even in parishioners and the body of Christ, because we're having to find other ways to share the gospel. and that's awesome. We've got to think outside the box, and that's what Jesus did every single day.
Mhm.
Every single day he found a new way to share his love with people. And I think that that's what we have to do as well. We got to find new ways, because
Mhm.
that old stuff is it's not there anymore.
Man, if I had a dollar for every single time I've heard the word pivot this past year,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
but it is true. Like, and especially if you like worked with the church, I know that you used to help your parents because
Mhm.
they were church planners. Like
Yeah.
they planted their own church. They made
Yeah.
their own church from ground up, made
Yeah.
their own church. I think that's awesome. Takes a lot of courage and a lot of faith.
For sure.
Um, but I we talked about it in youth. We had our first in-person youth, and it was, of course, socially distanced and everything,
Mhm.
this past Sunday. But we talked about things that we had lost. But we also, some of them said, our their faith, they lost their faith, and I'm like, yeah, because we did go to church on Sunday, every single Sunday, or you went on Wednesday nights, whichever one you did, or if you did both, and you were spoon fed. You were
Yeah.
spoon fed your gospel, you were spoon fed your lesson, you were spoon fed what God wanted you to hear. And then whenever it was time for you to pick up the spoon,
Mhm.
you didn't do it.
Yeah.
And it is hard. I think that was for me actually at the beginning it really wasn't. It was towards the middle, but I'm telling you, like this past year, I grew more deeper in my faith than I have in my whole life. But
For
I
sure.
had to choose that.
Yeah.
And some days I didn't want to pick up my Bible.
For
I,
sure.
and
For
it's
sure.
hard, but
Mhm.
it's that practice of obedience. It's just like if you play a sport,
Yep.
like if you want to be a starter, if you want to be a starter, then you're going to have to show up to
Yeah.
practice. You can't just show up to the game and be like, put me in, coach, I'm ready to
Mhm.
play. Like
Mhm.
you can't be first string in a band or the orchestra or anything like that. You can't be first seat
Yeah.
if you don't practice. You can't just show up and put a flute or a trombone in your hand and be like, I'm ready to play.
For
Like
sure.
you got to practice, and it's just, and you can't expect the coach to be there at your side,
Mhm.
coaching you every single second of the game.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so I totally skipped. I usually start with this one, but I gotta, we're gonna just lighten the mood a little bit and talk about food because I love food. I love
I
all
love
different,
food.
I love different types of food, all
Mhm.
that. So if you're having a bad day, you have to
Mhm.
go to a restaurant. Okay, you can't cook something. You have to go to a restaurant. What restaurant would you pick and what would you eat?
Oh, that's such a good one. Um, if I'm having a bad day, I probably want comfort food. And I'm probably just gonna go to Panera. Like honestly, I just like want a delicious, cheesy, bready, doughy, like sandwich that just like is oozing with mayonnaise and condiments that really shouldn't be on there. But I'm having a bad day, so I'm gonna eat it anyway. And I'm gonna have a broccoli cheddar bowl of soup
Oh,
and a bread bowl because I'm
oh.
having a bad day and I want all the carbs possible for me. And I'm gonna have a green tea on the side. And that is definitely my hard day meal.
You'll okay, so the reason why I'm laughing, and you're gonna laugh. Aaron
No
said
way.
Aaron, like I said, guys, we met at Princeton and we're in this cohort together. And one of the first episodes, Aaron Rodgers, he said the same thing
Oh
almost. He
my
said
goodness.
Panera.
Oh
So
my
I'm like
gosh, yes.
dying. That is great.
Absolutely. That would and if I splurge, I'm gonna get a little side of mac and cheese and save it for later.
Yes, all the
Yes.
carbs. All the
All the
carbs.
carbs. I
Yes.
just it's I'm having a bad day, so I need to be comforted. And carbs start with the letter C, so does comfort,
Comfort,
obviously, same thing. So
comfort and carbs. Oh gosh. Okay, so if you could relate to any person in the Bible,
Mm.
who would it be and why?
Honestly, I like it might be cliche, but like I think I relate to Ruth in a lot of ways because she had to be patient for a really long time. And not only that, but I think Ruth spent a lot of her life serving. And I love serving. Like I in every point of my life, I've always kind of like been there for people and I've always loved that. Not to say I'm like a martyr or whatever, but I've just really enjoyed making sure others are taken care of, like Ruth. And I also believe that, you know, it's the Lord's plan for me to send someone in my life to meet that kind of need for me in terms of a spouse. But I understand she had to be patient. And that just, I don't know, because I think we can kind of get in a place of frustration going through life and having these expectations. But I think patience really is important for me. And that's a really gentle reminder to just like, hey, it's fine. Take your time. It's not a rush. What you're doing now is valuable. What you're doing now has meaning. And what's next is going to be awesome, but enjoy where you are right now. So that's, yeah, I would say Ruth.
Hi, I would actually pick Ruth for you. I really
Really?
would. Yeah, I would. I would pick Ruth for you. And I love that you magnified patience
Mhm.
because I don't think we realize, especially in the day and age that we are now, where everything is like instant, instant,
Yeah.
instant, instant, instant. The faster, the better. The
Yeah.
most corners I can cut, the better. But if you're looking at if you're looking at everything in the Bible, I mean, you know, Noah waited 120 years,
Yeah.
120 years. And Moses, he could have gotten to the promised land in 2 or 3 days, and it
Yeah.
took him 40 years.
Yeah.
So it almost is like God last year was like, hey, I need you to go through that wilderness, and I don't
Mhm.
know when I'm gonna get you out, but
Yeah,
until you realize it and until you pivot the way I need you to pivot,
yeah,
we're gonna keep running this race.
yeah.
We're
And they
gonna
stayed in the wilderness until they got the lesson and
Yeah.
they understood what they were supposed to gain. And I think that I don't know. I think on the one hand, we can get frustrated because it's like, what am I not learning? What am I not getting? But also, it helps us to focus on like, get the most out of that situation.
Yes.
You don't know if that is your last time in the wilderness, right? Like, we should spend everything that we can learning and gleaning from the space that we're in because there's a reason we're there. There's a reason we're being taught those lessons, is because they're going to be valuable later. And so to overlook them or to say they're not important and then to have to do it all over again because we didn't get it, that's the real loss there. So I think you're right.
Yeah. Um, and like I promise you, you're gonna miss that chapter. Like, yes,
Hmm.
there's gonna be hard seasons, but then you're gonna be like I saw this one. Here I am. We talk about like how bad social media is, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes you get sucked in. It's addicting. It really
Oh, for
is.
sure, for sure.
Little tiny 30-second videos on TikTok, and then all of a sudden it's an hour past, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you feel drained. You
Yeah.
really do. But I saw this one TikTok, and it was like, and it was a scene from Inside Out where, like, if you've ever seen it, if you haven't, you need to see
Hmm.
it. It's nice, it's cute, kid movie, but it's the imaginary friend, and he's like
Yeah,
disappearing, and he's like,
yeah,
go, go, yes, you made it. And the TikTok was the old self was the imaginary friend before the wilderness, before that hard time, or during that hard time. It was like, you made it. You
yeah,
made it. And
yeah,
go and do great things. Go
yeah,
do great ventures. And yourself now is going to be like so proud.
yeah,
So don't rush. Enjoy that experience. And just dive into it. And
yeah,
it's sometimes it's going to hurt. Sometimes it's not a joyful experience, but I'm telling you, there is beauty in the discomfort.
hmm,
Um, okay. Okay. So one piece of advice that you would give to the youth today. If you,
um, I think I said it before. Don't believe social media. You know,
Mhm.
people post what they want you to see. People show you exactly what they want you to believe about them. And that may or may not be the whole truth. In fact, it's not the whole truth. We know it's not the whole truth. And so I think to see images and to see people who have projected this perfect life, y'all, that is literally not even real. Adulting is so hard. It's the ghetto. Like,
Oh,
please enjoy your teens as long. Adulting is ghetto, and I will say it time and time again. Okay, guys? Like, oh my goodness. Because then, like, people are like, oh my gosh, you have to work every day of the week. And also, let me take your money because I'm Uncle Sam and I take taxes. Oh, also, you want to live? Awesome. Give us more money because you need a house. Oh, you want to be healthy? Give us more money just in case you get sick. And we're going to cover you in insurance. Oh, you want to drive places? Give me more money because you want a cute car, don't you? It's the ghetto, y'all. So please just enjoy your teens. Like, don't rush to grow up because it's not that exciting. I mean, it's great. Obviously, and I enjoy being an adult. I'm grateful for where I am, but I miss being a teenager and life being not this complicated and having falling outs with my friends and then making up with them a week later and all the ebbs and flows of all of my raging hormones and being sad and happy and crying and depressed sometimes. Like, all of those things are completely normal and okay. And don't let other people influence you to think that the journey that you're taking isn't the right one for you, because everyone's journey is different. No journey is identical. So if you're living an identical life to someone, you're probably not doing it right, because your journey should look different. So just take some of that pressure off yourself and have a good time, smile, find reasons to smile every day. Yeah,
mhm.
that's what I would say. That's my advice.
I love it. And I'm telling you guys, she said, all of the emotions are normal. All of the
Mhm.
emotions, both male and female. Guys, it is perfectly fine to be upset about something and genuinely be upset. You don't have to turn that up like sadness into anger or anything like that. Like, don't think that you need to do that. But also, like, please don't think that just because someone looks put together on
Mhm.
Instagram or
It's a lie.
Facebook or TikTok, they're not. I promise you.
Yeah.
They have moments where their life is in shambles just like everyone else.
Yeah.
If they're walking the halls and they're always dressed a certain way and, always put together, I promise you there is something underneath the surface that they are hiding. So don't be afraid to be your authentic self, like,
Mhm.
ever.
Mhm.
And like, Destiny, we talked about the mission. And I feel like, just to touch base before we like close it out, like, I feel like that trip for you guys, even though it's a camp, it's a mission trip. Because like sometimes whenever like my friend went to a mission trip outside of the country, and the place that they stayed, they said, "You're not here for us.
Mhm.
You're here for you,
Mm.
and you're going to be changed." So even if you go to another country, you're not really going for them. You're going, unless it's like a natural disaster or something like that, and
Mm.
you're going to help relief funds and all that
Mhm.
stuff. The work that you could do, you can do in your house, in your home
Yeah.
neighborhood. You can do at camp. The soul work, because whenever you do serve, because I'm a serving soul too, you really do find a happiness and a sense of, like, I don't know, I just feel so content
Yeah.
after. Sometimes I feel a little bit heavy because some of the experience that I see, like, hand out hand, and it's like I'm very empathetic. So I carry people's burdens, but I generally come out a better person.
Mhm.
So I encourage you guys, whenever we do things, whenever we get to do things again, to show up, because I'm telling you, you're going to see your life transform. And hopefully we can do something kind of like that. We probably can't go all the way across the United States to the mountains and throw you
One
all in,
day.
but there are wrong turns all in the West Virginia hills that we can throw ourselves in. But all right, I didn't ask you this before, but I am going to ask you now because I'm asking almost everybody. Would
Okay.
you feel comfortable praying us out?
Of course.
Okay.
I love that. Thank you. Lord, we thank you for this day, God. We thank you for bringing us to where we are, even though most days we didn't know if we were going to make it. We thank you that we can depend on you. And even though humans may fail and humans have flaws, God, we know that you're perfect in every way and you always know what we need before we recognize it. And so we thank you so much for meeting our needs, God. We thank you for every person that's listening here, Father, that you would just meet them where they are, God. We know that you see their heart and we know that you see the pain that they've experienced, Father. And we just thank you now that you're comforting them and holding them where they are. They don't even have to move. We thank you for just being where we are right now. We thank you for Shauna for just creating this amazing platform for your ministry to be given to so many people. We pray that you would bless us today and us, keep our hearts and our mind. Bless this country, God. And we thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you for listening again. And just remember, do not be afraid to open up your minds, to break down those barriers, and to gain some authentic perspectives so we can start filling in that gap, y'all. We need to do that. Stay phenomenal. I love you all. Destiny, thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed this beautiful soul friend of mine because she is absolutely beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you.